one thing I'm often asked is about, can we do methylation testing, because people are under the impression that doing genetic methylation testing means that we can manipulate their detoxification or their treatment based on their genetic results. In the past, it was one of the ways that we could surmise what was happening in somebody's system with some of the methylation gene SNPs. But recently, I've been in contact with the Walsh protocol, which I think is a much more useful way to address methylation. Basically, what we do is test for functional methylation, meaning what is actually happening with methylation in the body. Genetics tell us what your potential is. Genetics tell us what your gene SNPs are that you inherit from your mom and your dad. It doesn't tell us what's actually happening. It's kind of like testing for a susceptibility, but not all genes are turned on or turned off the way that people think they are. So sometimes, even though you have a gene SNP, I'll give you an example. So I have two people in mind. They have the exact same gene SNP pattern with methylation, but one of them can take methylated B vitamins just fine and the other one gets violently ill. Why is that? It's because certain genes in one person are turned on or off, and certain genes in the other person are turned on or off, and those things are affected by the environment. So it depends on what viruses they've had, what environmental toxins they're exposed to, what chemicals they're exposed to, what emotional situations they're exposed to. Those things all affect how your genes express. So just testing for a gene pattern is not very useful in my mind, and it's kind of an old-fashioned way of thinking. Now we have better access to things about what genes are turned on and off, and that's with the G.E.N.I.E gene test, and that's with DHA laboratory methylation, functional methylation testing. So we can really help people with methylation issues, whether that's detoxification, depression, anxiety, ADD, autism spectrum disorders, and even conditions such as schizophrenia. And the success rates are very good. So when I say G.E.N.I.E testing, I'm talking about the Ritchie Shoemaker genetic profile that's available to do, particularly for pathways of inflammation and also detoxification. It really focuses on people who have biotoxin illness. So we can see what pathways are turned on that are inflammatory or anti-inflammatory, and what pathways are turned off that can either be inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. You can also tell things like whether or not certain infections are at play, whether or not environmental toxicity like mold is at play. You can see in a real world, right now sense what's happening in the body. Sometimes if their picture is very confusing, their labs are confusing, regular inflammation labs, you can do this genetic test and see what's happening in real time with gene expression, and that leads to more specific treatment tailored to that particular individual.